So good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Lastovskiy. I'm CEO and founder of Forensics, and we are starting our fifth event, which is called AI and Fraud. And first of all, I wanted to introduce my remarkable and distinguishable panel of speakers. Noris, Ismail. Noris, do you want maybe to tell you, I'm lost in your regalia and list of your qualifications.
Sure. A very good morning, everyone, and online as well. I'm Noris Ismail. I'm currently the European Advisory Board member of the International Association of Privacy Professionals, and predominantly involved with global data privacy, cyber, more from the proactive side, and also AI. Most of the activities are predominantly about data, because every day we're talking about data, so we're sharing more with all of you guys during the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noris. So yeah, if you need to know anything about data privacy, data security, Noris is the global expert on this subject matter area, which is quite interesting and quite complicated for me, for example. And I know you will see it that data is very much connected with fraud these days. So I think we will be able to demonstrate that on the case studies today. But before we go, let me introduce you to Geoff Nicholson, old friend and colleague and partner of mine and of Forensics. And by the way, both Noris and Geoff are advisory board members on Forensics advisory board. Geoff, maybe you can tell us.
Yeah, so I was a consultant basically on strategy and risk management, mostly to banks over my career, which has been about 40 years. And met Michael when I was running PricewaterhouseCoopers in Central and Eastern Europe, a consulting business there, which forensics was a really important part of the business and something that I particularly liked. So with his move back to London, we've connected. I was thrilled that I could now help him again in developing the risk management and risk assessment, risk governance side of the business, particularly around AI, which is obviously a very hot topic this year with all the technology companies that I work with.
We're all quite fascinated by what AI is doing, and hopefully we'll demonstrate to you that this is not just today's hot buzzword, it's really a game changer. Quickly about myself, I'm 23 years in fraud investigations area. I started in 2000 KPMG Moscow, then I worked for PwC Moscow, New York. Hello. I worked for Kroll. I ran financial investigation practice between 15 and 19 for Russian CIS region before moving to London, where I worked for Ancora Consulting, and then more recently for Gately Legal, which is a law firm from up north UK. And finally, in 2023, I founded Forensics. This is a global investigations firm based on technology. We have operations, seamless operations across the globe. We have people in the US, Ukraine, Azerbaijan, UK. We are global. We only have a presence here, like headquarters, but we investigate fraud wherever it takes us. And as you can see and understand from my accent, I'm not even from the UK. So I did all my life, I chased fraud around the globe, and I worked with some of the people in the room here before. Very quickly, just a few words, like what do we do at Forensics? We try to address the most modern and complicated threats of fraud, cybersecurity, and data breach. And as you will see, the area is evolving so quickly that it's hard to keep up with the pace of the development of technology. So this is what we're trying to do. We combine technology with experience. Collectively, people at Forensics have more than 170 years of experience. So I have some people with 40 years just criminal investigations, interviewing, so old school. At the same time, we have the other part, which is much more sophisticated people who study artificial intelligence, machine learning, coding, cloud computing, and things. All of us, we speak several languages because we have to do investigations across jurisdictions. But it's enough. The agenda for today is simple, so we'll have We'll have two sessions. Part one is, I call it theory. We'll talk about what AI is about is all about, why is it important. And on second part, we'll give you case studies. What we've seen in my 23 years career and in Noris and Geoff's long careers in terms of AI and fraud. And we'll talk a lot about CEO fraud, which I will define later on. And we'll have coffee break just to stretch our legs a little bit. So AI, I don't know, gentlemen, do you want to define AI, or I can give a simple AI definition? Like, what's AI for you? Artificial intelligence.
Well, I think it's taken on different stages over the year. Obviously, this year it's very much these generative AI, large language models, which came really into vogue with the launch of ChatGPT back in November last year, and it sort of reached everybody's consciousness in February. And students were using it to write term papers, and I suspect everybody in here has now played with ChatGPT a bit, and it's very impressive, as well as the various other versions. Bing, which is Microsoft, basically using the ChatGPT capability, since Microsoft has a deal with OpenAI for Bing. There's, Google has Bard. There's a large language model at Amazon. There's obviously Meta has very impressive large language models, which they've made somewhat open. A lot of companies, I think we're now on kind of the second. So there were earlier versions, which I don't think people should forget, of AI, which can also be used for fraudulent efforts like machine learning or statistical inference models, the kinds of things we've been using for 40 years or so for credit scoring, for expert systems for helping judge, for instance, in litigation funding, for example. A lot of people have checklists they'll run through computers through an expert system to gather data and make sure that people doing the analysis are like the expert system. But what has really changed now is that these large language models are quite impressive in the way they can answer a question in a very natural language. So impressive that they can also trick you, because they do hallucinate, they get things wrong.
Yeah.
They're getting better in some ways and they're getting worse in some ways, are the latest benchmarks as of last month. It is quite surprising that they're getting worse in some ways, and you need to be very careful.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, you'll all know of the legal situations where people blindly used it in the US and got reprimanded by the judge for the fact they had case citations in their briefs that didn't exist. Anybody who's done a search on their resume on ChatGPT will have discovered back in March or April, as I did, that there's somebody called Geoff Nicholson, who I never heard of, who apparently worked at all kinds of firms that I never worked at, as well as some of the firms I did work at. So, and the reason why that happens is the model is not, and I'm sorry if I'm sort of telling everybody things they already know, but the problem is that this model is not using a source of truth. It's not like, if you do a search on Google, for example, in general, it'll tell you the URLs and things, and you can assess whether, like if you look up, how does artificial intelligence work? Something from IBM will come up, and you'd probably say, well, that's probably okay to read. It might be IBM's spin on it, but it's okay. The problem with the large language models is they don't generally tell you, they're not actually getting facts from anywhere. They are using statistical pointers to invent sentences, which are very plausible and quite good a lot of the time, but they will get facts wrong. And that's why I think a lot of the initiatives right now, there's sort of two big sets of initiatives, I would say, where AI is going right now. And this doesn't relate specifically to fraud, but I think the two big ones that people should be aware of is, one, a number of the models have been adopted by large enterprises where they're trying to adapt it to their own data. And there's clearly a big problem where we all face the governance issue that you just don't want to put like client information into ChatGPT, because there's a confidentiality issue regardless of what OpenAI says, and your clients won't be very happy. So a lot of enterprises now are making big investments, which will bear fruit probably early to mid next year, of building their own enclosed environments, which use the language model capability, but working on their own data and keeping their own data in their own, probably cloud, but their own segmented cloud environment. So that's one thing to create security that's going on. And the other is people are making very big efforts to try and get rid of some of the hallucination, the wrong answers, uniting it with search engine kinds of capability, which is obviously something Google's trying to do very hard, not very successfully so far, I'd have to say. But that's another direction people are going in with this. So sorry, I'll stop there. That's a long, but say those are the two big things that people need to be aware of, and it obviously imposes a lot of governance and risk management issues that, we have lots of employees in our companies who are using this.
Thank you. You touched upon the issues. AI models have 4 issues: black box thinking. So you put in 2 similar inputs, you don't get 2 similar answers. This is how it works. ChatGPT, it conceptualizes words as tokens. So it takes a word and puts as a token, and also it uses probabilistic models of mathematical calculation. So it doesn't operate the same way as human brain, although the outcome, you see the definition, it's cognition. Cognition is learning. So the key thing about AI, it's able to learn, but it learns on sets of data. And the big issue is what this data is. If there is bias in data, AI will augment the bias. This is the problem. Noris, we'll come to you. I just want to keep on scale. So is AI a big deal? A lot of companies ask that question. Maybe we have a debate. We had a debate with Geoff. Like it's widely known, anecdotal, that it's a big deal. But there is a statistical experiment run by BCG and few big business schools, Wharton, Harvard, MIT Sloan, and for 6 months they surveyed 783 BCG employees across several countries doing 18 different tasks, typical consultant tasks, and you can see the result. The green graph is people who used AI to help them across 18 tasks, which basically replicate the typical task of high knowledge intensive worker. The blue graph is people who didn't use. The leap in productivity is about 42%. So it's statistically proven. There is no debate about it. It's here, and it increases people's productivity significantly. And it's a game changer. Now, what's important to understand? AI capabilities, what it can do, what it can't do. If you imagine a fortress with jagged frontier, AI is like this fortress. So whatever is inside the fortress wall, this is what AI can do well. Whatever is not inside the fortress, AI cannot do well, and human outperform AI. The problem is, if you can see the walls of fortress in the real life, for AI it's invisible. You cannot see. You can only experiment to understand. And this is the graph from this paper by BCG, which shows the jagged frontier, the blue line there. This is some tasks are performed by AI better than human, some tasks are performed worse than human, and it's hard to tell. AI can write a sonnet easily, but it cannot write exactly 50 words poem. And God knows why. Even scientists cannot explain why it can do one thing well and similar thing it can't do well. So you have a frontier, but it's invisible and it's expanding. It's changing. So it's very hard to know what AI is actually doing well and what AI is not doing well, because unless you play with it, you won't know it. And this is important because if you ask AI to do a task outside the jagged frontier, it will make it much less efficient compared to human. If you ask it to do something inside the frontier, it will do it better. And we saw the statistics within AI, it increases productivity significantly. Okay, so now coming closer to the subject matter of our seminar today, AI and fraud. I just wanted to name a few factors which basically make technology almost an arms race between fraudsters and companies or lawyers or whoever, investigators, whoever is trying to fight fraud. What happens these days? First, all the systems become faster. So you know about fast payments? Yeah, you can tap your phone to pay on a tube, and you can do immediate money transfer now. Guess what happens? For banks and payment processing companies, it decreases the time space in which they can intercept the fraudulent transaction. Also, people's attention span, because of Generation Z, the way of they perceive information, it decreases more and more and more. Like average attention span of people, 6-7 seconds, not more than that. That's why shorts, if you know what shorts are, my kids know for sure. Shorts and reels are so popular on YouTube. It's videos below 10 seconds. This is how people consume information these days. And apparently, small attention span makes it much easier for fraudsters who are trying to catch you on your lack of attention to details. It makes their job easier. Now we have virtual meetings. We have virtual signing of contracts. You don't need to see people anymore to contract. Like if I want to sign a deal with a partner of mine, let's say with Fabrice, I'll just send him an email, right? And you just sign something with Fabrice. And this is like the lack of human-to-human interaction makes fraudsters' life even more easy, because you skip all the red flags which were there for years, which I'm from old school, we were all taught how to catch fraud basically when it happens, different red flags. Now it's all technology, and it's minutes, if not seconds. Noris, we're coming basically to AI and data, but do you want to say a few words how you see technologies impacting the fraud landscape and risk landscape?
Sure. Thank you very much, Michael. Yesterday, I was on the panel in relation to the usage of AI in emerging threats, kind of technology, kind of platform and vendor, which is very, very interesting because for the past, I would say, 3 years, we have seen the emergence of all platform that is infused partly by AI, not 100%, maybe 20% or 30%, and platform which is claimed to be genuine, but exactly like look the real kind of platform, infused by AI. Because in the world today, okay, there's always bad boys, right? Okay, and they see this as an opportunity, okay, to really use whatever kind of data modeling model that they have, using variety of quintillion data sets. We're not talking about billions, we're talking about quintillion data sets based on the variety of data modeling from machine learning, kind of approach by the data scientists, and to develop variety of different data sources that can be generated and can be profiled and aggregated, okay, through whatever technology platform that they have. So that's the first lens that we are seeing the emergence of this trend. Second, comparatively, if you look into the technology world today, AI is really gradually getting geopolitical. Okay, we're not talking about just in the context of global data privacy, GDPR, and the American landscape, and as well the Asian landscape like China and India. These are all big superpower, super economy. But there's also a race in relation to regulating AI. Regulating AI in the sense that, okay, on the one hand, to what extent that the data that everyone access, the government or public sector, private sector, entrepreneurs, and as well as small businesses or professional services firm receive from the third party is A, genuine, B, the data is good enough, quality enough, and C, the data is ethical. And this is actually where the issue that triggers in most of the C-suite conversation, the board of directors conversation. And we also have seen where a lot of technology platform providers, whether cybersecurity providers, privacy providers, legal tech providers, or even any technology providers, where they just like dissect any data that they have on the web to data scraping. And there's also another element where the source of the data might be A, questionable, and then B, to what extent that you actually are using old data, as what Geoff said, about your ChatGPT a while ago, right? Okay, this data is up to date and accurate, right? And then C, whether the data is really linked to the purpose. Doesn't matter whether it's fraud, or does it matter with actually, focusing on a particular activity? And this is actually what a lot of these emerging themes that we are seeing in relation to how exactly the technology now is getting more complex and sophisticated. Because on the one hand, you have the legacy data, right? You have a huge data lake. You have a huge, dark data where you're not using the data, but you're keeping the data in your system, application in the data center, but you don't know why you are actually backing up this data, which call it the dark data. And then on the other hand, you have like existing data that you are processing, existing data that you use for purpose or investigation, for example, and also from third-party vendors, third-party partners. For example, most of you guys are professional lawyers, professional investigators, and you get the third-party data from sources where, okay, you think that it is good enough for the purpose of the investigation. Maybe the data needs some calibration and recalibration, right? And that's where the quality of data is very important. And the last point, just to link back to Michael's point on technology factor, is the question is, before you actually click something, okay, in relation to whatever platform and technology, and as well as the purpose that you are using, you have to think about like, okay, is the data good enough, accurate enough? Is it just a robot, kind of animal kind of, mechanism? And C is sometimes leading multinationals, especially in the US and some European companies, they actually have 3 questions that to authenticate that you are not a robot. Okay, so it depends on the questions that you want to actually really frame to authenticate that you are a human being, because it goes back to the early definition. All right, AI, okay, is actually how exactly the machine imitate humans, right? Okay, this is a very, very simple kind of definition, because when you look into that definition, again, it's not easy for you to apply in the context of the day-to-day life, because there's a huge confusion. People thought AI is automation. No, AI is not automation, right? The general people out there who is not extremely technical, they thought that, oh, AI is just like another Google, or AI is just like another robotic process automation, RPA, or AI is just like another advanced version of analytics. That is a very, very flawed understanding. So have you heard about Alan Turing test, right? So Alan Turing test is actually a very good test to identify whether the systems, the application, the technology has actually included all of these elements, about this artificial intelligence, which is also part of this current Alan Turing Institute, kind of effort and initiatives. But I think going back to the technology factors and frauds, there are a variety of angles that technology can really initiate or accelerate fraud activities, which we'll explain later in the case studies. Sorry for the quite a lengthy observation here.
Yeah. I like your point about data leaks and outdated data, because as you will see, a lot of frauds are actually enabled by leaked data in combination with AI, because fraudsters they have to know something about the target, and how they get it through leaks. Okay, I think we have just 2 more slides before the coffee break on the theoretical part. Then we'll break for 10 minutes for coffee, and then hopefully we'll get to much more interesting actual case studies of AI and fraud. First, it will be historical non-AI fraud, and then AI-enabled fraud. Noris, but coming back to you, AI fraud and data, like why it matters. I just mentioned briefly like data leaks, how they basically fuel fraud. And it will be much more clear to you on examples why fraudsters do need data, why they buy data, stolen data on the black market. This is a big deal, but maybe tell us a little bit more what companies can actually do to prevent this huge risk. We hear about data leaks like daily now, monthly at least, huge data leaks from all the big names there. What a normal company can do to do something with that?
Sure, definitely, Michael. I always highlight very fundamental lenses when it comes to the interrelationship of data. Because if you look at the slide, there are 4 main pillars. The first is people, second is culture, third is conduct, and fourth is behavior. So what does it mean? in reality, right? For example, if you are a global professional services firm, in global investigator or in lawyers, you deal with global partners, right? And you deal with third-party vendors or system and application. And different region has different understanding about the data, right? So this is where the culture comes in. Because in Asia, generally, sharing is caring. They don't care about consent generally, right? Whereas comparatively here, of course, you have to seek the reason as to why you process the data on what legal ground of data processing activities under the GDPR, for example. Whereas in the US, depends, right? Okay, of course, in the US, there are a variety of, I would say, the state level of privacy laws, and there's a CCPA in California. And also there's a ongoing conversation in the Congress in relation to the so-called federal privacy, which is still being debated in the Congress. So if you look into the culture and people aspect, you are seeing that these are actually the potential risks that might trigger, assuming that most of these people culturally, by design or by organic, they thought that it is okay, we use all of this data, doesn't matter whether it's a legacy data, dark data, or any kind of data that we receive for the purpose of investigation, for example. Or maybe they realize that, oh, we should commoditize this data because no one is using this data, right? That's where there's a emergence of scamming activities, right? Online scam in Asia, and particularly in that side of the world, where 60-70% of the activities are linked to that data, the data lake that you have mentioned. And then you have this kind of conduct and behavior where the conduct and behavior is very cliche for financial services sector, regulated sector, because even the compliance team, you have the first line of defense, second line of defense, third line of defense. So in financial services regulated sector, they have conduct and behavior element where you have to actually ask very, very, I would say that top 4 to 5 level questions. First, the source of the data. Second, all right, okay, have you done any kind of data ethics kind of mechanism to ensure that it is ethical to actually really process the data and for what purpose? And then the third question that you should ask, to the team is that the source and the purpose of the data, is it for the purpose of new purpose or different purpose activities linked to whatever the so-called data policy requirements? And then the fourth question is the authentication aspect as well, which is important. And this is where the security aspect comes in. And the fourth question is in relation to the data modeling scenarios. Have you done any data modeling scenarios by looking into account like different kind of modelings? And this is where the data scientist has to be in the picture in that kind of conversation to minimize the risk. So in short, Michael and everyone, what we have seen nowadays is that PLC companies in the UK have actually aligned and still, learning and relearning to include AI as part of the cybersecurity data privacy in the strategic risk register. If you read all the top 100 FTSE companies in the UK, they have now realized that, hey, we're investing in this, domain, but we need to ensure that we need to minimize the cross-silo governance. So what does it mean is that sometimes when there's a new law like AI, we have to do a lot of things when it comes to this, but actually you can get all this data that can be leveraged from cyber, from compliance, from the DPO, from the general counsel, so that whatever data that you have for the purpose of that AI, whether investigation or compliance, you can really align it together. And this is where the complexity is, going back to this slide, the people, culture, conduct, behavior, because what behind everything, whether it is fraud or non-fraud, is data, whether the data is good enough. That's why nowadays we've seen, hackers or perhaps those who are considered as, ethical hacker, they actually regard AI as a service, to get more money, Cyber attack as a service is a business. It's a big business because it's part of the geopolitical element, because data, is actually getting very and extremely geopolitical. I pause here for a while because there's a lot of case studies here. Yeah.
That's good. Could I just add one thing, which I'd just like to emphasize the people aspect of this, which, I think was, Noris quite rightly highlighted. I do think there's a problem at the moment. Some companies are doing this really well, but in both the general population and the employee population, I don't think there's been nearly enough education about the risks of this. I think the stories we get in the newspapers are about AI are things like the Terminator scenario of artificial general intelligence taking all our jobs or killing us and taking over our nuclear power plants. We get stories about, just yesterday in TechCrunch, there's a huge story where the EU Commissioner for Values and whatever was complaining about the platforms like X/Twitter that aren't cooperating in the disinformation, taking down videos for political reasons and saying, the elections next year will be like. Those are all kind of problems, but the immediate problem is that AI enables scams at huge scale, both because of data leaks, but we had data leaks before. And the way to prevent that in our companies, and we need to tell the general population, you need to redouble your efforts. You need to enable 2 or 3 factor validation techniques. You need to guard your passwords. You need to keep things in sort of, you really need to be very careful. You need to look at the URL of the news story you're reading if you want to believe it, or the great new idea that's been sent to you. Or look at the email address of the person who claims to be cutting you in on this great deal in Hong Kong with the bank account he just discovered, and somehow he's chosen you, or she's chosen you as the lucky recipient of $6 million. All really obvious things, but people are getting taken in by this, and nobody is really emphasizing you have to be careful about it. At the employee level, and some companies are doing this really well, but at the employee level, we just need to go back to the basic discipline that when you're asked to make a payment, you have to go through the proper processes. Because the way people are going to steal money from your company, as I don't want to steal Michael's thunder, but it'll be impersonating somebody saying, oh, make a payment immediately, it's really important. The employee needs to be told, say no, go through the process. Small company, medium company, especially in small companies. And again, we need to educate people that we need to go back to very basic hygiene principles of governance and risk management and make sure that people are following the correct processes, because if you do that, you way reduce the possibility of having money stolen from you.
I can't agree more. It's definitely one of the things which we will all take away. There's not enough training and education about how fraud is perpetrated. Hopefully, in the second part, you will see how easily people can fall the victims of modern tricks, where it becomes close to impossible even for sophisticated investigators to understand the authenticity of a communication. Fraud case studies. I took CEO fraud as a basically like anchor topic to demonstrate how AI changed the landscape of fraud in last few years. But before going into the history of CEO fraud, and I'll give you some of the cases I worked on as part of my previous jobs. Let me quickly give you the definition. CEO fraud is very simple, is when the big high-ranking employee, whether CEO or CFO, is tricked into sending money out of his company. Very simple. And it's very old, very popular scheme, and it's a big industry. CEO fraud is very big industry, because think about it this way: there is no downside for fraudsters to try. If they lose, if they're caught by attentive CEO or CFO, they lose nothing. They just go on to another target. Okay, so before going to the today's AI supercharged frauds, I want to remind you about a scheme which was extremely popular, like even I would say 10, 15 years ago. I myself received a Nigerian letter. I don't know how many of you received Nigerian letters. Basically it says, I am so-and-so from Nigeria, usually a prince, and you have to help me to transfer a big amount of money to my Swiss bank account, and I'll remunerate you for this. Lots of people fell victim of this. How it works, they ask, help me with a little commission to facilitate this payment, like a few $1,000s, not much, to transfer like a few $1 million. and I'll remunerate you. And people do believe in this. The scheme, it says here, it started in 70s. It boosted in 90s, but it started in 70s, Nigerian letter scheme. Actually, some researchers dated back to the 17th century, to the so-called Spanish prisoner scheme, where, let's say, a prisoner was captured and put in prison in Spain. It was also in France. And then to help him out, you have to give a little bit of money. And then the prince, who is noble prince or some marquise, he will remunerate you when he's out of trouble. But you have to pay first. This is how it works. Psychology, you help somebody, this is good, and you'll get money for it. This is even better. A lot of people fell victim to this because the definitions I give here is from FBI report. If FBI puts it on their website, it means it's a big problem in the US. It was a big problem in the US. So what happened in 90s? The scheme was operated through letter, through fax, through telephone for years from 70s. In 90s, it received a big boost because of email, because it became much easier for fraudsters to send emails around, and that's why I received these Nigerian emails, and I am sure some of you received Nigerian emails, because all they need is email address, and then they send these emails at scale. They don't care if 99% will send this email to spam. They care about 1% who reads it and who reacts. Why I'm telling this story, because a leap in the technology from non-email to email gave a rebirth to Nigerian fraud. In the same way, you will see how AI gave a rebirth to other frauds. But now closer to CEO frauds. So first time I came through the CEO fraud, I was part of Crawl in 2015. So I was based in Moscow, and we received a client call, and the call was like, the client received an email. It was a big metallurgy company. It was a group of companies, and the client received an email. The client's CFO in one of the payment centers, because the big companies, they have payment centers. Usually they process all the payments. It was combination email and call, and the gist of the message was there's a secret deal going on in Europe, M&A deal. It's urgent. We can't disclose the details because it's secret, because it's M&A transaction. Geoff will confirm. We know from PwC, it's always a secret. You can't say anything about it until it happens. And the company actually stopped the payment in the last possible moment due to some controls. But the thing is, fraudsters who sent this email and called, they knew how the approval of the payment system, how the approval system in the payment department worked. And this is very typical for CEO fraud. Fraudsters know. Fraudsters have to know how to sound legitimate. Then they send these emails, or then they send these faxes, or then they, as you will see, call people, or even now with AI they can do videos. But the gist, I want you to remember, in 15 it was email and phone calls, and the fraudster had to know something from within the company to navigate the internal payment approval process. The amount there was like few $1 million. It was stopped at the last moment. And then investigation, of course, the task was where the leak came from, how fraudsters get information from inside this company. Now, a few years later, I moved to London, 2019, and I worked at another company, and we received another fraud case from Iceland, very similar. So this time, imagine Iceland is an island in Atlantic, and they produce electric power from water, from steam, and to produce electric power they need turbines. So this company, the victim, they were ordering turbines from Japanese gas turbine supplier. What happens? The CEO of this company is on vacation in summertime. There's only CFO at this point where CEO is on vacation, CFO can approve the payment by one signature. So fraudster somehow knew that the guy was out of town, the CEO, and there is no dual approval anymore. The invoice is coming for Japanese produced turbine, which is still on the way from Japan to Iceland. It's a long way, it's half of the globe. And it's paid by CFO. CFO is approving it with a single signature. It's $3 million. And the email was saying, we just changed, due to internal reorganization, we just changed the bank account to a Hong Kong bank. And guess what? Hong Kong bank is a shell company. The money went somewhere. And it's even if you catch the fraudsters and the money, it's very difficult to prove in court, like who is at fault here. Because apparently company sends money out thinking that this is a legitimate payment, and this is the problem of the company, that they didn't check that they are sending it to legitimate vendor or supplier. We spoke with one partner of a law firm how difficult it is to bring this case to court. You have to think about in which jurisdiction to bring, and you have to think the basis. So CEO fraud was popular in 15, 19, but it was all what I call manual type fraud. You have to know the vacation schedule of senior executive. You have to have some sort of intelligence from within the company how payment process work. You have to do basically a lot of work, intelligence gathering, getting people's schedule. You have to send somebody or bribe somebody within the company to effectuate this. Now we're coming fast forward to AI. First reported case of AI-enabled fraud was also in 2019, and it's deepfake. What is deepfake? What happens? UK company, local CEO receives a call from his boss from Germany with German accent, with the Riemann tone of the voice of his boss. He receives an instruction to remit the amount of $243,000 to the account, and the next day he'll get an invoice for the same amount. Guess what? And the payment request is urgent. The guy pays, money is gone, and this is a successful attempt. But now you don't have to have an agent inside the company. You don't have to do all this hard work collecting like how the approval process work. All you have to do, you have to collect a sample of voice of your person you are impersonating. And if you think, like I'm talking now, there's video recording, there's camera, sample of my voice is out there. And that's it. AI will reproduce, and I will show you how AI works at a link later. AI reproduces the voice exactly to the pitch and tone and all the frequency, and even like little tricks of how voice fluctuates to the extent that you cannot distinguish. And guess what? You receive a call from your boss from Germany who says, go pay this invoice immediately, and you get the invoice from vendor legitimately looking next day or the same day. It's almost a gamble, unless you're super careful, as Noris, you said about culture and people. Unless you think twice, most people will just do it. Okay, next one. It's not just individual. It's not just individual companies who are subject to deepfake with deepfakes. It's now banking institutions and payment centers. How it works. Data, first of all, data has to be stolen and it's always stolen. There's lots of leaks, and it's sold on the black market. People who steal the data, they don't use the data. They sell it to other people in the black market. There's a lot of trading platforms for this. If you know, there was a Silkway 1 and Silkway 2 in the US. It was hunted by FBI, then it was taken down, then it re-emerged. This is the platform in dark web where if you have Tor browser, you can go and buy anything from weapons, narcotics, paid assassinations, and of course, stolen data. Data is sold. People get bits and pieces of personal data like name and address and an account number. And with this, they would call a bank and pretend to be an account holder. All the questions from the bank about where you live, what's your birthday, what's your mother's maiden name, they're all answered. The voice is exact replication of the victim because of AI, and its fraud is cheap, scalable, and that's why New York Times writes about this. Is New York Times article from 30th of August 2023, so it's not even 1 month old. Banks don't know what to do with it. There are AI systems which try to intercept these calls, but it's still the problem. Even the statistics is not gathered how many people unfortunately lose their money from their personal accounts due to this. And yeah, the only recommendation is you have to be now careful where your video, voice, and personal data is, which is back to the point of Noris of culture and thinking and education. And Geoff, you've mentioned there's not enough education for people because now the cost of fraud is going to zero. Fraud as a service is a new term you can sell. And in the past 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I was PwC. We were doing Geoff, you may remember, the Global Economic Crime Survey, where we had the questions to the CEOs of companies like, what's the typical fraudster profile? And we had male, 35, 40 years old, senior to middle manager of a company, like nice portrait of like me, maybe in another employer. But now it's different. The typical fraudster profile is 15 years old, 16 years old, in slippers, in his bed with computer. And the young people, they treat it as a game. They don't even understand that this is a crime because they can go on internet and just try this game to get money. If you play games all the time, if you play like kids now, they play lots of different games. It's another game for them. You just, instead of playing against computers, you play against real people. The other version of this deepfake voice is swatting. It's like where I know Geoff, you don't like this example, but people call police 911 and they say the third floor, 45 Albemarle Street, terrorist activity. Guess what? SWAT is coming in 5 minutes here. And the deepfake is very good quality. They answer all the questions to 911. Police is coming. There's articles on this. It's sold SWAT as a service. SWATing is a service. People buy it for $50 to $500 to get the competitor or whoever, the enemy, punished a little bit. But unfortunately, some of these swatting calls end up not really good. And this is a problem. So deepfakes, voice deepfakes are easy to pull. It's on the internet. All you need is a sample of people's voice. This is how it works. Before I go to even more sophisticated to videos, maybe Geoff, Noris, do you have anything to add to these few fraud examples? What can we do about it?
Well, I mean, the problem is that, it's impossible to say you can completely fit, but I think a lot of the examples you see, it's because somebody hasn't followed procedures properly. I don't like the swatting example because I don't think it's relevant in a corporate context. So I mean, maybe it could be, but obviously the problem. But it's a problem for people who have disputes with their neighbors, and so that's why I don't like it. Not that and it's pretty appalling behavior too. But all the rest is appalling. But you know, I have to say, I'm pretty confident that if somebody tried to call Lloyd's Bank and impersonate my voice, they wouldn't get very far, because they don't have enough information to get through the screens. What's available on the dark web in terms of my name and address and mother's maiden name, that's not what Lloyd's wants to hear. And now, I do think it's really important for a bank to tell its customers, or any financial institution to tell its customers when there's been a data breach, for them to be able to detect a data breach, to be able to tell customers and advise people to change their passwords and things. But I mean, you also have to have like a voice banking number that you give. They're not actually doing voice recognition. I think there is a problem now that voice recognition and facial recognition systems could be compromised, and we rely quite heavily on this. But I mean, I still have two-factor authentication on things, and so I think, you know, is somebody going to be able to buy on the dark web? And I think if you're careful, you can. Like the fraudsters want to go after weak targets.
Yeah, that's true.
So be strong, and I think we need to tell people, be strong. And you know, it's like the rule that when you live on a communal garden, all you have to do is make your house the best alarmed, because then the burglars will go for someone else. Or the guy who, when the bear comes into their encampment, you know, he stops to put on his running shoes, and his friend says, "Why are you putting on your running shoes? You'll never outrun the bear." And he says, "I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you." So cynically, you know, I think we need to tell people, you need to enable all these security features, even though it'll cause you a few problems. And then I do think there's a problem about facial recognition and voice recognition. But I don't think a lot of banks are doing voice recognition banking anymore.
I think Lloyd's is doing voice. I mean, it used to advertise voice recognition, where you use voice to authenticate. But now maybe they're not doing it anymore.
But then you still had to have a PIN or and you still had to know some identifying information. So I don't want to say that it's perfect, but I just think people can be a lot more careful, and we need to educate people and we need to educate people in companies, like in banks and things, to really follow. First, we need to make sure our processes are right and as bulletproof as possible, and people need to follow the processes.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good example for people's personal bank accounts, right? But what can we do about corporates? Maybe, Noris, what's your thoughts here?
Sure. I think Geoff has excellently articulated about the policies and procedures. There are two lenses that I would like to share with all of you. I think the first lens is that we are seeing not only the regulatory sectors, but also the non-regulatory sectors are taking this fraud via technology as a very one of the top high risks as well. Because if you're a startup, if you're small businesses, and you deal with big companies or big banks, right? So from the assurance perspective, those big companies are expecting you have the controls in place, you have to have the framework in place, cyber in place. I think one of the elements that most of these small companies and medium-sized companies are doing is like playing a football or any sports. Three approaches. The first is defensive. You have to apply the defensive model when it comes to threat, or when it comes to any kind of data breach that link to fraud, because when there's a fraud, there's breach, definitely a data breach, right? So second is offensive, right? To what extent that you would like to outline the offensive scenarios in the context of your organization. And the third is tactical. Okay, there are things that you can actually tactical manage that links to whatever kind of potential, fraud that you might actually encounter, right? Or a third-party fraud. It might actually not trigger from you, but it might trigger from the third-party vendors, right? It might be triggered from disgruntled employees, right? It might be triggered by disgruntled partners, right? It might be triggered by disgruntled people that have a very bad faith and motivation, about you from the branding perspective, right? Because these guys, they can just do anything to get the data, to ensure that, they commercialize the data from the fraud. So that's one lens. And another lens, which is very, very interesting, is in relation to the resilience, recovery aspect, and the insider threat. Because when there's a fraud, definitely there's a data breach. Again, it depends on the severity of that breach, that link to the fraud and the source of the data. So a lot of CEOs or CISOs or CFO, even general counsel, or even chief CISO and the DPO, they actually, really need to have that kind of the response, plan in place. And second, the narrative. What is exactly the narrative they need to tell to the shareholders, assuming that you are a PLC, right? Okay, and suddenly there's a whistleblower that blew the whistle. Oh, there's a fraud here, and no one talk about it. And the PR and the media firm or cable news actually reveal, the news before the CEO knows about this fraud, right? So that's also the crisis management aspect as well that you need to manage as part of it. I think it goes back to what Michael highlighted. Whatever kind of case studies that relate to the CEO, there's such a domino effect to shareholders, domino effect to customers, domino effect to partners, domino effect to other stakeholders that you are dealing with, because there will be an impact in terms of the trust and reputation. How exactly you guys manage this data, right? Okay, so there's also another example where, yesterday, one of the key conversations that I had as part of that panel is in relation to metaverse and as well as fraud in the metaverse world. Yeah, and currently regulators are thinking about, do we need to regulate the metaverse? Because in reality, it's so complicated, even to manage all of these data issues, what more in the context of fraud in metaverse, right? Like Michael highlighted, like the dark web. So people, the younger generation, with due respect, the Gen Zs, they call it, digital native. Okay, they are very sophisticated. They always regard data, to be core point, as a business model, fraud as a service, fraud as a business. Now AI as a business, as highlighted a while ago. So I think going back to Geoff, important point is, the policy and procedures, educating, the executive level. And then there should also be a reverse coaching and reverse between the C-suite and this younger generation. What we're seeing in fintech companies, they actually have a conversation with the younger generations that are very, very digital native and very hands-on in technology, to tell them that, hey, these are actually the top 20 scenarios modeling that are linked to fraud that you need to think about in a fintech environment. And that's what fintech are currently doing, because they just want to understand what are the sophisticated fraud models that we can actually anticipate in the future in a 360-degree way. Doesn't matter, it's not the CEO, any parties. And then second, to future-proof these scenarios. Okay, future-proof the scenarios using what kind of AI technology, right? Or a combination of manual plus AI, or an end-to-end kind of AI, because AI is evolving. And definitely there will be someone out there that can actually develop an AI or system that can authenticate whether it's really a deepfake or another deepfake. I think Intel actually has launched a software to authenticate that a few months ago, which is still an improvement in relation to authenticating the data that is triggered by generative AI, deepfake, and etc. So I pause here.
Yeah, I just want to show you a video now, and maybe Leila, can you make it for guests online on the screen now? So before showing you the video, there is a announcement by California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation saying scammers like to deceive investors by using phony CEOs, sham algorithms, and Ponzi schemes. Today we issued desist and refrain orders to 5 entities, individuals who violated CA, California securities law, issued April 19, 2023. One of the 5 companies subject to the desist and refrain orders was called, guess what? Max Spread. So now we are going to watch the video presentation, and Max Spread is alive. You can go to their website and get accustomed to with their products. Now we are going to watch the presentation of CEO of Max.
Greetings, dear partners. My name is Michael Vaines, and I am the CEO of MaxSpread Technologies. And before I start talking about plans, prospects, and the future, I would like to thank you for our common past and present. When we were planning to bring the company to the public space, we could not even imagine that we would be able to achieve such significant results already at the pre-launch stage. Today, as the company is in the final preparations for its official launch, let's take a moment to remember what we've been able to achieve together in such a short time. It's no secret that the successful start of an MLM company directly depends on what kind of people become the first partners of the company. We started working on attracting leaders even before MaxSpread Technologies entered the public space and have not stopped it even for a minute after the company's pre-launch. To date, we have successfully negotiated with leaders in several dozen countries. To maximize the effectiveness of these negotiations, we met not only online, but also visited many countries from this list for face-to-face meetings, group and personal presentations. As a result, offline leaders in Malaysia, Vietnam, India, Indonesia, South Africa, Nigeria, Russia, Bulgaria became partners of the company. Online leaders work practically all over the world, including North America and Europe, Canada, Great Britain, Italy. Right now, we are taking the first successful steps to enter the Latin American market together with local leaders. Communicating with the most influential MLM entrepreneurs around the world, we managed to make sure once again that the current moment is the best for the official launch of MaxSpread Technologies. The market needs a reliable long-term project with high-quality international products and wide opportunities for partners.
He'll go on for like 2 more minutes. Guess what? Mike Vaines, yeah, it's not a real person, it's a deep fake. This is a completely artificial person. There is no Mike Vaines at this company. There's no person working by the name of Michael Vaines. There's no real person by the name of Michael Vaines. The chief marketing officer of this company is the guy called Jan Gregory, on the run now in Israel, I think. Company is still operational. You can go buy their securities if you want, or whatever spread on the sophisticated. He tells like what you can buy. This is fraud. This is fake. This is how they do it now, and people believe. Seeing that combination of real video and this deep fake video. You can see the movements, all the movements of the eyes and the lips are so sophisticated. I mean, I wouldn't take by watching this video that this is a deep fake. This is a deep fake. So this is 2023. So we spoke about deep fake voice. Now you got deep fake avatar CEO of real company but non-existing person. And this is just the pace. We spoke about Nigerian fraud and email like 20 years ago in 90s. Now in just 4 years you got deep fake voice and now deep fake videos. And you see the quality of this. Who from this room will take that this is not a real person? Yeah.
Well, I have to say, I think what he's saying is, it's complete rubbish. So maybe I've done too much AI, but I would say what he's saying is clearly nonsense. So I think anybody who's taken in by that, I mean, there is a sucker born every minute. And I think, we need to, again, I'm sorry, I keep banging on about education, but I mean, I think you could do this. If I could say, I have a wonderful project internationally, I think talking about Russia and Bulgaria should be a bit of a clue in April of this year. There are a lot of things in that video that you'd say that's pretty suspicious.
Yeah, but the thing is, what he is saying is actually what fraudsters start.
What's his project? What is the project exactly?
MaxSpread Technologies.
No, but what is the what is it actually investing in? What's it about?
Jeff, the thing is, if it's complete nonsense, there's a few strokes on the keyboard, and you can get somebody as educated as Noris to write a speech.
No, I agree. I'm just saying to you that no, but when you use a large language model, this is the kind of stuff you get. Yeah. This is what happens.
No. I've read about this. This guy was somebody gave him a speech. It was typed. The speech is typed, so he is reading the text.
We saw the video. Anyway, all I'm saying is I think people need to be educated to the fact that, things that are too good to be true are too good to be true. And this is, he never even says what the project is.
Yeah, but this is a problem with the complication of the message. If I was working from the fraud side, I would write a good speech for him, with the good definition of what the project is. The thing is, now you can give the text to the computed person, to the generated person, and whatever you want, he will say. And I'll show you one last thing.
There are technologies that allow you to stamp videos. What's going to happen within 2 or 3 years is videos will be stamped as to whether they came out of a large language model or not. And you'll be able to see, whether something is compromised. People will be able to stamp something that it was not the result of a large language model, that is actually achieving and encrypt it with a timestamp and encryption. So that's technology that's a bit of the future. But I agree. This is a problem.
The targets of the thing is, the targets of this fraud is not people like you and me. The targets are much less sophisticated.
Well, this is exactly this is what I'm saying, that this enables fraud at scale. I just don't think this is. I think there are much worse examples than this that are far more compelling. But this is an interesting video. It's just. As you say, you could write a video that's better. The problem, the more specific your video is about the project, the easier it'll be to arrest the person who did it. If I say, we're investing in a hydroelectric dam in Colombia, and so I think, I don't know, I think there's a lot of education points we need to make, but I completely agree.
The problem is money are lost. The guy who ran it is at large. Nobody is in prison.
It's a real problem.
And the company is, although under this desist and refrain order, it's still operational. You can go on website. So the problem is apparently there. And,
it is a problem,
and people lost a lot of money. Otherwise, Frosses wouldn't pull this up, this kind of website and deepfake video and all the other things, unless they can make money out of it. They apparently made a lot of money. We'll see. We can watch this case and talk about it next time, where they went. I want to see them, of course, in prison, but the problem is there. And now going back, so the thing is, deep fake audio, deep fake video is all good, but the reality is that the most widespread scam is still business email compromise. So you don't actually need that level of complication if you just send a fake email. The email which pretends to go from legitimate vendor with a new bank details, and because emails are also written by AI, now they don't have the red flags like 10 years ago. We investigators, we will tell our clients, look for misspellings. Look for lost punctuation, look for non-capitalized first letters, look for some phony looking domain names. Now it's all good. It's good graphic, good grammar, good punctuation, good standard language, English language. You cannot, all these red flags, they went to trash. You cannot capture business email compromise by carefully looking at the email and saying this looks like it's written by a Hungarian, or Russian, or Ukrainian. These are the real centers of operation. That this is coming from non-native English speakers. AI makes it almost as if Geoff, you would write this email. And the graphics will be there, and the links will be there. It will look legit, completely legit. And because BEC, business email compromise, is so cheap and so scalable, fraudsters, they do not hunt for 50% success rate, 15, 10%. They're okay with 1% success rate to get one company to transfer what we had, $243,000 in one case. In Iceland, it was $2.3 million. In Russia, it was a failed attempt, but it was few $1 million. Pull one of this in a week or in a month, and your return on investment is 100%, 10,000, 100%. It's huge. So the problem is actually that even with simple stuff like business email compromise, without deepfakes, without voice, without videos, people still fell victims, and the schemes to catch it, the red flags to catch it, which used to work even 5 years ago, because of ChatGPT, it's not there anymore. It's not there. You have to look for other sorts of red flags. You have to look at metadata. And normal user, normal CEO or CFO, would he go and look at metadata? Does he even know what metadata is? I wouldn't. It's hard, yeah. So this is the real problem. The problem is, like with Nigerian scam, it became so cheap and so scalable that it's easy to pull but hard to detect. And a few more words because we are actually out of time now. It's 10:45. But industry perspective, like we talk about banks. Like last seminar in July, we spoke about legal industry, litigation funding industry, and the idea is that AI is coming at scale to all these industries, consulting industry, my industry, forensic investigations. We have to work with AI, we have to embrace AI because it's so productive, it's so good. The problem is this arms race between fraudsters, bad guys, who receive huge return on investment, and good guys who receive like legitimate return on investment. This is all I can tell. The advice, the only piece of advice is actually the same. I'll probably repeat what you said, Geoff. Educate, raise awareness. People at companies, at corporates, at law firms, everywhere now have to know how it works, how the CEO fraud, deepfake voice, deepfake video, deepfake website, because AI is not just writing an email, AI can create the website for you. You don't have to know coding anymore. Educate, and review controls. As we said, like in Iceland example, the guy was on vacation, the controls were down, it was taken good use. The fraudsters take good use of diminished controls, and don't let controls, I think, Geoff, you managed it, don't let the control discipline down. And yeah, how we can help in an unfortunate scenario where fraudsters still get the money, call professional companies, call in, because like it's hard to investigate this. And it's not more like in the past we had receipts, bank statements, like invoices to prove the fraud. Now it's metadata, it's code, it's email headings, it's much more complicated type of evidence which you produce to court. It is not as simple as it used to be to prove this fraud anymore. So you have to have specialized team collecting evidence to try to recover the funds. I guess formal before Q&A part is finished at this point, and we'll gladly take any questions from the audience, if there are any. Yeah, Fabrice, you want to? No? Yeah. Okay. Do we have any questions online? Okay. All right, so thank you so much. There's no questions. It was good to see you all. Thanks for coming. And hopefully, yeah, nobody falls victim of the AI fraud. Be careful. Be careful. Thank you.